particular challenges. But now they come here and accuse us as if we, as the ANC, have refused to address and attend to these particular challenges. For instance, the issue of the illicit tobacco. There are leaders of political parties in this house who are benefiting from illicit tobacco. We know that. But now they come here and pretend to be holy and say, no, there's an issue of illicit tobacco, when we know that the leaders of some of these parties are benefiting from that. So members, we must not do that. Let's join hands, work together, and make sure that we address the challenges that are facing us as a country. Mhlonitshwa sekela somlomo njenge ANC siyawusekela lo mbiko ngithokoza kakhulu kwamambala nakhayilala.
Honorable the Minister of Finance.
Deputy Speaker, honorable members, I would like to start off by thanking the Standing Committee on Finance for the work that they've done in going through what must be technically difficult matters, and thank Honorable Maswangai for his leadership of the committee. In this House, honorable members, it's always good to return to what the purpose of this discussion is all about, after everything else has been said. The purpose here is to consider and adopt the Rates and Monetary Amounts and Amendment of Revenue Laws Bill, to the Taxation Laws Amendment Bill, and thirdly, the Tax Administration Laws Amendment Bill. So it's got nothing to do with what the Honorable leader of COPE was talking about. Under normal circumstances, he should have been called to order that it was out of order. It might be the case that he has not read the documentation. Nevertheless, our job is to help you understand what this is all about. In the medium-term budget policy statement, we indicated very clearly the difficulties that this country is going through, and there's no need to repeat that here. The economic growth rate is disappointing, and we know that. The question is what to do about it. We know that expenditure continues to put a lot of pressure on the budget. We know what we can afford and what we can afford, and the question is what to do about it. And in our role as the leadership, we have to implement a set of policies and programs to make sure that we get our act back in order. In this instance, as you know, following on the report of the Nugent Commission of Inquiry, we have now begun to restructure SARS to put it back to what it's supposed to be. We've appointed the new commissioner of SARS, who is hard at work, ensuring that we render unto Caesar what belongs to Caesar, all of us. He has already begun to build the large business center unit and also the illicit economy unit. And these are already beginning to bear fruit. I have indicated in this House before that we've already had some successes, particularly at the border posts, in stopping illegal cigarettes coming into the country. And in particular, at the Beit Bridge border post, and we have been successful in that regard. I know that the tobacco industry is keen on reducing the tax burden that they carry, but they know every year we have to make adjustments to the excess duties on tobacco. And I know they've come with many explanations about how, in their view, the increase in excess duties has not brought about more revenue, but instead has lessened the revenue. I think it's a good discussion to have, but we have to continue to adjust the excess duties, unfortunately. In short, honorable members, as I always say, I thank you very much for your contributions, much appreciated, and I thank again the committee and the chair for the leadership. Thank you very much.
Honorable members, that concludes the debate. Are there any objections to the rates and monetary amounts and amendment of revenue laws bill being read a first time? Yes, honorable member. That's a question. Yeah.
Chair, when you come to the second question, the DA will be objecting.
In other words, you are objecting. Yes, that's the question I was asking. We will note the objection of the DA, and we will proceed to request.
Speaker.
It's agreed to. Yes.
Chairperson, Speaker,
Yes.
please note the objection of the EFF.
Okay.
And also the objection of the FF Plus.
Oh, okay. I almost accused you of sleeping on your job, but I won't do such silly thing. Yeah, sorry. Thank you. We'll note your objections. That's agreed to. The Secretary will read the bill a first time. The Secretary will read the bill a first time.
Rates and monetary amounts and amendment of revenue laws.
Okay. Are there any objections to the taxations laws amendment bill being read a first time? No. Is there any? Oh, okay. Yes, I now put the question. Those in favor of will say, no, wait a minute. What's happening to my tongue? No, 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 no. Take it easy. I now put the question. Those in favor will say aye. Those against, no. I think the ayes have it. It's agreed to. The Secretary will read the bill the first time. Honorable
Taxation laws amendment bill.
Thank you very much. Okay. The Secretary will read the bill a second time.
Taxation laws, I've read the first time.
Yes.
Now you come to the third question. That is the third, the tax administration.
Yes.
Are there
Yes.
any objections?
Yes, 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 they are. Yeah, let me, yeah. Okay,
We've just passed this one.
okay, yes.
You go to
Honorable members, the question now is whether there are any objections to the Tax Administration Laws Amendment Bill being read a second time. Is an objection? Yes.
Deputy Speaker, the DA would like to lodge an objection and also ask for a division, please.
Okay. Honorable,
Also note the objection of the EFF, Deputy Speaker.
an objection having been called, the bells will be rung for 5 minutes.
tax administration.
Settle down, members. We're now ready. This is to remind you that you may only vote from your allocated seat. When requested to do so, you must simply indicate your vote by pressing the appropriate button below the yes, no, or abstain signs. If you inadvertently, honorable members, I'm reading an instruction. If you inadvertently press the wrong button, you may thereafter press the correct button. The last button pressed will be recorded as your vote when the voting session is closed. The question before the House is that the Tax Administration Laws Amendment Bill be read a second time. Are you all in your allocated seat? Voting will now commence. Those in favor of the bill being read a second time should press the yes button. Those against, press the no button. Those wishing to abstain, press the abstain button. Have you all voted? Okay. The voting session is closed. Honorable members, there's one abstention, there's 97 noes and 179 yes. It's agreed to. The Secretary will read the bill a second time. Wait a minute.
Tax Administration Laws Amendment Bill.
Okay, the bill will be sent to the National Council of Provinces for concurrence. The Secretary will read the 7th order.
Second reading, Rates and Monetary Amounts and Amendment Revenue Laws Bill.
Are there any objections to the bill being read a second time?
Deputy Speaker, the DA would like to lodge an objection, please.
There's an objection. We'll note that. Any other?
Please note the objection of the FF Plus.
Okay. Yeah. All right, it's agreed to. The Secretary will read the bill a second time.
Sorry. Rates and Monetary Amounts and Amendment Revenue Laws Bill.
The bill will be sent to the National Council of Provinces for concurrence.
Deputy Speaker, please note the objection of the EFF.
The 8th order, the Secretary will read the 8th order.
Second reading, Taxation Laws Amendment Bill.
Are there any objections to the bill being read a second time?
Deputy Speaker, the DA objects.
Okay, the DA objects. Who else objects?
Deputy Speaker, objection
EFF.
of the EFF.
Okay.
FF Plus objects.
FF Plus objects, yes. The Secretary will read the bill a second time.
Taxation Laws Amendment Bill.
The bill will be sent to the National Council of Provinces for concurrence. The 9th order, the Secretary will read the 9th order.
Consideration of recommendation of candidate for appointment to the Public Service Commission.
Honorable James. Honorable Member, you better run. Minister, you're standing in the, you are blocking traffic there. Honorable James, next time you must be seated here. Yes, next time, okay? Yeah, thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Speaker. Deputy Speaker, that is noted. Won't happen again. Honorable Deputy Speaker, Parliament is obliged in terms of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa and the Public Service Act to recommend a candidate for appointment by the President to serve as a Commissioner for the National Public Service Commission. Section 196 of the Constitution empowers Parliament through its committee to appoint 5 commissioners for the National Public Service Commission. Each commissioner should serve for a period of 5 years, which is renewable. The committee received a request through the Speaker's office to expedite filling of the vacancy for the commissioner's post in the National Public Service Commission. On the 22nd of September 2019, the committee placed an advert in various newspapers calling on members of the public who are fit and proper persons to apply for the vacancy in the Public Service Commission. The Portfolio Committee appointed among its members a subcommittee to run with the recruitment process and report to the principal once the recruitment processes are complete. 172 applicants responded to the advert. Most of the candidates who responded have requisite skills and experience to contest for the position. Candidates were shortlisted based on their previous background, knowledge, experience, and in various institutions. Honorable House Chair, the Portfolio Committee on Public Service and Administration resolved to recommend that the House approve the recommended candidate, which is Ms. Zanele Isabella Hlachwayo, for the appointment by the President to serve as a Commissioner for the National Public Service Commission. Honorable Chair, I therefore move for the adoption of this report. Merci beaucoup, shukran.
Honorable members, the question before the House is that Ms. Zanele Isabella Hlachwayo be recommended for appointment to the Public Service Commission. Are there any objections?
Deputy Speaker, the
Yes.
DA would like to object and make a declaration, please.
Declaration, go ahead, Honorable Member.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, as the Honourable Member mentioned, the Constitution requires the Public Service Commissioners to be fit and proper persons who will ensure that the PSC executes its duties in ways that are both independent and impartial. The Public Service Commission Act further stipulates that commissioners shall not hold office in any political party or political organisation. A legal interpretation submitted to the subcommittee tasked with making this recommendation further defined a fit and proper person as someone who demonstrates integrity, reliability, and honesty. Based on these criteria, it is hardly possible to come up with a worse and more inappropriate person to appoint to the PSC than Zanele Hlachwayo, whom the ANC nominated to fill this crucial position. She exemplifies everything that a public service commissioner should not be. Hlachwayo is unfit. Hlachwayo is improper. Hlachwayo is a biased ANC cadre. Hlachwayo has a demonstrated track record of lacking integrity, reliability, and honesty. She was mayor of Msunduzi from 2007 to 2010, where she allegedly spent millions of rands in taxpayer funds on her pet projects, including an extravagant trip to attend Barack Obama's inauguration as President of the United States. After only 3 years, even the ANC had had enough and fired her. The KwaZulu-Natal provincial government was also forced to place Msunduzi under administration. Under beloved comrade mayor, the financial status of the municipality rapidly deteriorated. There was pervasive non-compliance with statutory obligations, as well as a lack of oversight by the council. Honourable Deputy Speaker, does the person who destroyed Pietermaritzburg sound like a fit and proper person who has demonstrated integrity, reliability, and honesty? No, and it is not ethically defensible. But it gets worse, Deputy Speaker. Hlachwayo was reportedly number 33 on the ANC's KwaZulu-Natal list to become a Member of Parliament. In her CV, she boasts about being an active National Working Committee member of the ANC-aligned SANCO. During the interview process to fill the PSC vacancy, ANC members of the committee made a big show of asking the candidates, how do we build a merit-based public service? When I asked Hlachwayo whether her appointment wouldn't undermine any talk about building a merit-based and apolitical public service, she arrogantly responded that, quote, I will never stop being political, end quote. Honourable Deputy Speaker, does this sound like someone who will be perceived by the public as independent and impartial? No, and it is not ethically defensible. Just as scandalous, though, is the way in which the ANC actively undermined Kevin Malunga, the current Deputy Public Protector of the Republic, who also applied for the PSC position. Malunga submitted a distinguished CV to the subcommittee and had by far the best interview. Malunga is in fact fit and proper. Malunga is independent and impartial. Malunga has a demonstrated track record of integrity, reliability, and honesty, which is precisely why the ANC, guided by its cadre deployment policy, undermined Malunga at every turn. First, they tried to disqualify him on the basis that he was born in Zimbabwe, even though he included a naturalization certificate in his application, which showed that he became a South African citizen in 2010. Next, the ANC said there was a, quote, unwritten policy that Malunga's gender disqualified him from the post. When the DA objected to this flagrant xenophobia and sexism, the ANC tried to use a report from the State Security Agency, which supposedly implied that our current Deputy Public Protector may have a criminal record. This was despite the fact that the SSA never even checked his fingerprints. This entire process was a sham from the very start. In line with the ANC policy of cadre deployment,
member,
it
please,
was...
Sorry, just one moment. Please take a seat. Yes, Honourable Member.
Yes, Honourable Chair.
Yeah.
Honorable member has been speaking about the NCD all the time. He's forgotten that they've got a mayor in Swan.
No, that's not a point of order. Proceed, honorable member.
I repeat, Honorable Deputy Speaker, this entire appointment process was a sham from the start. In line with cadre deployment, it was designed to ensure that incompetent cadre Zanele got the post and the 1.5 million rand annual salary, and that professional public servant Malunga was eliminated. In the end, the DA's unrelenting battle against this effort to capture the PSC ensured that Malunga was at least formally listed as an alternate candidate to become PSC Commissioner. We have thereby kept open the door for President Cyril Ramaphosa to do the right thing. We call on him to reject the nomination of Kader Zanele and to instead appoint Kevin Malunga to safeguard the independence and functionality of the Public Service Commission. Thank you.
EFF.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Chairperson, the Public Service Commission has critical role to play in the efficient management of the...
Sorry, honorable member. Honorable members, please respect members on the podium. If you don't respect all of us here, Madam Kaula, honorable member, you are extremely out of order. Go ahead, honorable member.
Chairperson, the Public Service Commission has a critical role to play in the efficient management of the function of government. The Commission has a constitutional duty to guard and promote the principle of the public administration as set out in the Section 195 of the Constitution. This includes a high standard of professional ethics in the public service and to ensure that public administration is development-oriented, amongst other things. It is therefore important that the men and women who get appointed to the Public Service Commission are of a sound mind and are wired in correctly in terms of appreciating the role of the Commission can play advancing our developmental interests. Ordinarily, we would support the name of a capable woman to be appointed to the Public Service Commission. So, despite the fact that the qualities of the position, her character is not what the Public Service Commission needs at the moment. She left the job as a mayor of Msunduzi municipality under a cloud of corruption, and the municipality was put under administration under her watch. We would therefore not support people with a tainted past to come oversee the work of the public service. The public service is littered with incidents of corruption, of abuse of power by senior managers, of harassment of those who oppose rogue leadership elements. The Commission has been silent on this issue for a very long time. We would therefore want a Commission that has teeth to bite. We do not support the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable ANC.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. Masisho nje ngidlulela ukuthi kuyamangalisa kuyadumaza lokho kusho umhlonishwa udade oqeda ukusuka la ngoba ekomidini uvumelene nathi kodwa sikho lapha. The advancement of the developmental state model requires, among other things, strengthening the public service. This means professionalizing the public service for service delivery, build ethical public leadership, and fight corruption. Must be independent and impartial and exercise its powers and perform its functions without fear, favor, and prejudice in the interest of the maintenance of effective, efficient public service and high standard of ethics in the public service, as the Constitution provides. The ANC, Honorable Deputy Speaker, support the recommendation of the Portfolio Committee of Public Service Commission, Public Service and Administration that Ms. Zanele Isabel Tlachayo in terms of Section 196 of 8A of the Constitution be recommended for the President, Honorable President, to be appointed to serve in the Public Service Commission. May I, Honorable Deputy Speaker, just say the important processes that we followed, which all of us, by the way, honorable members, we agreed on, that fit and proper, which was before the shortlisting, fit and proper and the understanding of the public service, what does it mean? And we agreed. Secondly, the criteria of shortlisting in terms of the Chapter 10 of this Constitution, what is required, we all agreed, which was before the shortlisting. And the 9 candidates that were shortlisted, all of us, we agreed on that. That means all the candidates who were shortlisted were fit and proper. Thirdly, was the issue, we did receive preliminary vetting results, which we're waiting for the final one, which the President will receive in due course after this process, which I must say is quite disturbing and alarming what honorable members behave as if we didn't look at those things, we didn't agree on that. Honorable Deputy Speaker, Parliament and the ANC as the ruling party, leading party in government, we reaffirm here and today our commitment to work and support and empower and make sure all the recommendations that are put before the committee and Parliament by the Public Service Commission, it strengthens our oversight role as the public representatives. Honorable Deputy Speaker, let us take this opportunity so that we don't waste time, because I've alluded on 3 major processes which are critical that we followed, and also we're not dealing with the person. But Honorable Deputy Speaker, I must say, kungaba yichilo kokuthi mangabe umuntu kuleya ndawo simthatha sengathi usebenza yedwana, usebenza sisonke, nanikuphi nina. Mangisho ke sibonge abantu ebesibambisene nabo kuzo zonke inhlangano. Honorable Speaker, Deputy Speaker, let us take this opportunity. Kubo bonke ababe bekwe besigcacela
Point of order, Slan.
ukuthi babe kule commission.
Sorry, Slan.
What's your point of order?
No, Slalo, ANC bangumsindo manje asezwa lutho lana. Can't we coming to hear everything?
Honorable member, let's proceed. Honorable members, in terms of Section 196 of the Constitution, the persons nominated for appointment to serve on the Public Service Commission must be approved by a majority of members of the Assembly. Although a division has not been demanded, members are required to record their support for the recommendation. The bells will be rung for 5 minutes. Honorable members, we do wish to remind you that you may only vote from your allocated seat. When requested to do so, you must simply indicate your vote by pressing the appropriate button below the yes, no, or abstain signs. If you inadvertently press the wrong button, you may thereafter press the correct button. The last button pressed will be recorded as your vote when the voting session is closed by the chair. Order. The question before the House is that the House approves the nomination of Ms. Zanele Isabella Tlatwayo for appointment to serve on the Public Service Commission. Are all members... honorable members, just be in order. No, be in order. We are in the middle of a decision here. We are in the middle of a decision here, so don't raise anything. Honorable members, voting will now commence. Those in favor of the nomination should press the yes button. Those against should press the no button. Those wishing to abstain, press the abstain button. Have you all voted? Yes.
Honorable Deputy Speaker.
Yes, sir.
The member there, Mr. Ngumalo, can't vote. He has a problem with the machine.
You don't have to say that. Just raise your hands and point him. The people here will know that.
Yeah, he's voting no.
You don't have to tell us. It's done on the button, and if you talk, you come here if you want to. The voting session is closed. Honorable members, there are 2 abstentions. There's 105 noes and 168 members. Honorable members, the consequences of this is that the appointment to serve on the Public Service Commission must be approved by a majority of members of Assembly, and that's 201, so you don't have approval. Honorable members, order. Order. The next item on the order paper. Sorry? Huh? What is the implication? Honorable members.
No more chewing.
Honorable members, you are at work. Can't you just be quiet a little bit? Honorable members, therefore the decision is postponed. Honorable members, we now move to the next item on the order paper, which is a debate on the urgent matter of national public importance in terms of Rule 130 in the name of Honorable E.M. Buthelezi on the strike action at South African Airways and the implication thereof on the economy. I now recognize the Honorable E.M. Buthelezi.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. I rise to this podium, Deputy Speaker, with deep disappointment that a few weeks ago we were celebrating the victory and possibilities of our country, which the Springbok reminded all of us. They flight our flag the highest, yet our iron bed of the skies, which should be ringing our flag at 30,000 feet high, couldn't take off the ground. However, Deputy Speaker, the IFP in calling this debate of urgent national importance was not calling a session of this assembly to simply grandstand and further bemoan the constant failures of once our successful airline. We call this debate because, like I said, we are reminded that together we can do better. That is what our policy, the IFP, says, and we are constructive. We also call this debate because South Africa warrants it. Our people who elected us here warrants from us the actions required and robust debate to take place in this House so that we bring them the solutions that the government can implement. Many have extensively diagnosed the root and the cause for the failures, and more recently, some of the corrupt cronies have been allegedly been fingered in the state capture. To summarize the root, it is the greed, corruption, flagrant abuse of public funds, the deliberate disregard of our country's legislation, incompetent care deployment, and compromise and unethical leadership. In terms of those who have fingered in the state capture, we cannot pronounce ourselves on that as yet, but we can certainly say that the government has let us down and we have spectacularly failed to bring the change to SAA. The IFP has long held that SAA's reliance on state resources should be limited and phased out in a more sustainable cost model through a public-private partnership agreement in order for it to become global competitive, drive down cost, and to restore service excellence. Already South Africa, and in particular SAA workers, are frustrated. Their constant frustration will turn into anger. We have seen what fire and flare feels like when flights were grounded and when operations came to a standstill. And we must never, Honourable Deputy Speaker, deceive ourselves and think that the fact that the workers have gone back to work, that is the end of SSA's problem. This moment, even though it may seem all doom and gloom, it perhaps exactly the breaking point we needed. It is the Rubicon moment of SAA. This moment certainly presents us with an opportunity to crackle down the present solutions and save our airline carrying our country's flag from flying into flames. Honourable Deputy Speaker, let us be reasonable here. We know that changes does not come or does not happen by the blink of a finger. SSA's mandate and how it benefits each and every South African, and how it benefits our country, and how it makes us the gateway to Africa again, is what we need to be debating about at this House today. South Africans don't appreciate the fights and the noise. They want solutions and plans to be met with political will, justice, and strong actions over tough talk and many bugs with no bites. Just as we rose in saying we are strong when united, let us use this moment, SSA's Rubicon moment, to stand together in implementing a strong plan which will see SAA take off. We're looking forward to hearing constructive members engaging on this matter. And ngiyakholela Sekela Somlomo ukuthi njengoba nje le ndlu namhlanje iphikisene nokuqashwa komunye ongafanele baye bengaqashwa ne-leader e-compromised ekutheni ahole i-public i-department le as u-commissioner will do the same in addressing all our matters that are confronting us, because now is time la kufanele sonke sibumbane siqhambe nama-solutions kuzo zonke iy'nkinga esibhekene nazo njengezwe. Iqiniso lithi izwe lethu selidinga upholo obuqotho, kudinga ukuthi amaphutha esiwenzile ngaso sonke isikhathi esingemuva ikakhulukazi eqembini elibusayo siyibuke sikwazi ukwalungisa for the sake of our country and the sake of future generations esikhola ukuthi sonke lapha simele ngoba asikwazi ukusebenzisa iy'mali zabantu ngekhathi zonke ukuze zibhekile u-SAA nawo wonke ama-state owned entities ngaphandle kokuthi enze lokho kufanele afulfile ama-mandate ayo. Siyacela ukuthi indlu yonke i-contribute kule debate ukuze sifinyelele ey'xazululweni lezo ey'dinga yizwe, futhi siyakholwa ukuthi abantu bakithi ma bethatha isinyathelo sokuya emgwaqeni yingoba kunesikhathi eside izifundo zabo zingalekelelwa futhi zingezwakali zingalelwa abaphethe. Ngeke sikuvumele ukuthi inkohlakalo kulabo abaphethe idle lubi bese ufa bakhokha iprize egcina kosuku kube ngabasebenzi. Siyabonga kakhulu ke sihlalo ohloniphekileyo. Thank you.
Honorable Khaya Magaqa, ufanele ulinde ngikubize ba. Oh, go ahead.
Thank you. On the 6th June this year, President Ramaphosa met with chief executives of over 20 key state-owned companies at the union buildings to discuss the contribution they can make to economic revitalization and social development. The President acknowledged that several entities were facing several financial and operational challenges that pose great risk to the South African economy. In the end, the meeting recognized that SOEs have considerable resources and capabilities that, if better coordinated and managed, could have a far greater impact on economic growth and job creation. However, the challenges they face range from inadequate capitalization and poor governance to outdated legislation and political interference. The ANC government is committed to work with the leadership of these SOCs to urgently address these difficulties. The decisions of the meeting with the President have formed part of the Presidential SOCs Council established to provide political oversight and strategic management to reposition and revitalize the SOCs as catalysts to economic growth and development. While SAA found itself in a dire strain on the brink of collapse, needing a cash injection of 2 billion rand to keep its operation going, the two majority unions served the company with a strike notice. It is worth noting that 5 other unions in the company did not strike. By the way, the strike had nothing to do with the wage increase, but more to do with populist politics and demagoguery by both Solidarity and NUMSA, which are two sides of the same coin, with an agenda to destabilize our economy in the state under the ANC government. The call by the DA to privatize SAA and other SOEs is not a panacea to all their problems. In fact, that dogma call forgets the inconvenient fact that those who corrupt public sector employees and public representatives are business people who want to get an unfair advantage on their competitors. However, while the ANC supports the efforts by the government to sustain strategic SOCs through appropriating money from the National Revenue Fund, a number of moral questions do arise. One, should public funds be used to continuously sustain an airline which is used primarily by the bourgeoisie class and middle strata? Should not this money be channeled to fund the transport sectors used by the overwhelming majority of our people, trains, buses, and taxis? The answer for me is pretty simple, a big no. We may not always agree with the finance minister, but the recapitalization of these SOCs that continue to have bloated executive with layers of managers with executive packs, managers who award worth dodge contract, is morally very difficult to justify. Government must seek to find partners with aviation expertise to buy equity in SAA so that it can continue to fly the South African flag. We cannot continue subsidizing the rich. While we respect the ideological purity of some who claim they are opposed to strategic equity partnership, as a matter of principle, we know that some of them, such as VPS cabal, advocate the reckless appropriation of public funds to keep SAA and the other SOEs purely out of self-interest. They know it is easier for them to loot the public sector companies than entities that are part privately owned, such as Telkom. We know they will launch personalized attack through their Twitter fake accounts against the Minister of Public Enterprise, because to them, stealing and laundering the savings of elderly rural gogos to find their lavish lifestyle is okay. With our mothers and grandmothers' money, they have bought luxury cars, houses among the rich and well-fed, the very same white capital they claim to hate so much. The governments need to urgently better definition of their respective mandate of state-owned companies and align policy to more effectively support their achievement. The legal and regulatory environment within which SOEs operate, which are often ill-suited to the specific needs of entities and constrain innovation, must be updated. The exercise by government shareholders representative of their oversight responsibility and inconsistency in appointing the board must be improved. There have been many turnaround strategies at SAA that have met with limited success due to factors such as mismanagement, state capture, incorrect fit configuration, discontinuity and disruption at leadership level, and the erosion of skills. The ANC support the recommendation in various forensic reports that are being implemented, with some being handed to the Hawks for criminal investigation and also at the National Prosecuting Authority for evaluation of evidence. As a result of this work, some employees suspected of involvement in wrongdoing have been subjected to internal disciplinary hearing. And as expressed in King Code 4, there is a greater need now, more than ever before, for leaders who carry the values of ethical leadership and effective leadership, and those dialectically reinforcing one another. In conclusion, Deputy Speaker, as the ANC, we want to express our confidence in the Minister of Public Enterprises, Comrade Pravin Gordhan. The unwarranted attacks, even from within our movement, should not deter him from carrying out the responsibilities of his office by the President and the majority of the people of South Africa. The ANC condemns, in the strongest possible terms, the ethnic chauvinism that rears its head from time to time. The ANC affirms its non-racial, non-sexist character, which was built with sweat and blood by a generation of outstanding leaders of our movement, such as O.R. Tambo, Albert Lutuli, Yusuf Dado, Ruth First, Sophie DeBrain, Betha Kowa, Joe Slovo, and many others. Non-racialism is a foundational principle of the ANC and the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa. There is no transformation policy in the ANC that says white South Africans must never be appointed as a senior public sector position. We are the ANC of Freedom Charter, which says that South Africa belongs to all who live in it, black and white. I thank you.
Thank you. Mhlonishwa Mazamba Nigalis.
Sihlalo ngiyabonga kakhulu ukuthi uyangibona namanje ngikade ngagcina ukusebenza nawe. Madam Chair, since 1994, the South African taxpayer has paid bailouts that amount to 57 billion rand to SAA. SAA is bankrupt. The organization is riddled with cadre deployment, corruption, and entitlement amongst the unions representing the 11,000 employees. Who in their right mind demands any salary increase at all from a bankrupt employer, let alone an 8% increase way above inflation? The irony is that they have been granted such an obscene increase by giving away other people's money. Just this year alone, 5.5 billion rand in bailouts has already been paid to SAA, all of it having to be borrowed at huge expense to future generations. Despite Section 55 of the PFMA that requires that the accounting authority submit financial statements within 5 months of the end of a financial year, the SAA board has not tabled annual financial statements for the past 2 financial years and is rapidly heading towards the end of the 3rd financial year. The SAA Board of Directors are simply flouting the law. They seem to think they are above the law and should be lauded for ignoring it. Section 22 of the Companies Act prohibits any company from continuing to trade when it is unable to pay its debts when they become due. This was made patently clear last week when Honourable Pravin Gordhan, the Minister of Public Enterprises and the SAA board warned employees that SAA might not be able to pay salaries at the end of November. There can be no doubt, Madam Chair, that the SAA directors are allowing SAA to trade recklessly and are acting in violation of Section 22 of the Companies Act. It is not only Dudu Myeni, the corporate warlord, who should be declared a delinquent director. It is unconscionable that the current directors allow SAA to continue to trade recklessly while they hold out a begging bowl for ever more bailouts. The SAA board treats Parliament with complete disdain. 14 days ago, Scopa instructed SAA directors, who agreed, to provide Scopa with certain documentation within 48 hours. SAA is due to appear before Scopa again on Wednesday, tomorrow, and yet none of the documents requested from SAA have yet been provided. The board director, who glibly quotes an unsupported figure of more than 40 billion rand that it would cost to liquidate SAA, is clearly attempting to frighten Parliament into agreeing to more bailouts. Madam Chair, South Africans from all walks of life, whether very poor or very rich, have had enough of massive bailouts for SAA, and it is only the ANC and the trade unions who stubbornly persist with maintaining SAA as a state-owned charity. SAA must be put into business rescue. The government-guaranteed debt will have to be accommodated, and SAA must be sold for whatever the best offer received from Branson, Emirates, Ethiopian, or any other buyer is.
Thank you very much.
That is the bottom line, Madam Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Honourable Paulson.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, the industrial action by the workers at the South African Airways is an indictment on the poor management of not only SAA, but the general state of state-owned enterprises. The poor management of these entities is not accidental. It's part of a broader and coordinated agenda and machinations by the clique now in power, who are in power only as extensions of the greed and the desires of the financiers in the private sector. The objective is to deliberately run down critical and strategic state-owned entities so that in the end they are privatized and handed over on a silver platter to the friends of those in power. This is a classic state capture by the present regime under President Cyril Ramaphosa. The workers are made to be casualties of this process. It is the workers who must bear the brunt of the greed of the private sector and the woeful incompetence and brazen corruption of ANC politicians and the appointees at the state-owned enterprises. The industrial action by NUMSA and the South African Airways Cabin Crew Association was a response to these evil machinations. It was a rejection of the attempts to make workers casualties of a battle that they are not part of. It was an affirmation of the central role workers play, not only at SAA, but in the economy in general. The failure of SAA must be put squarely on the shoulders of Cyril Ramaphosa and Gordhan government, who have failed to stabilize the state-owned entity. They have been presiding over the government for 2 years now, and SAA, like other state-owned entities such as Eskom, Denel, and others, are continuing to deteriorate. There is no comprehensive plan by the Ramaphosa-Gordhan coalition to save state-owned institutions and the broader economic conditions of high unemployment. President Ramaphosa keeps misleading the country with investment conferences that promise billions of rands that no one feels on the ground. If there are billions in investment, why is SAA planning to retrench workers? It is therefore correct for workers to unite and fight against retrenchments. The failure of SAA cannot be blamed on ordinary workers. They cannot be the ones who take responsibility by losing jobs which support them and their families and relatives. They are the ones that go to work every day and relentlessly give up their time, their sweat, their blood for SAA that has no regard for workers. We cannot have an economy that keeps on shedding jobs under the pretext of prudent management of entities. We cannot have state-owned entities that are at the forefront of endangering the livelihoods of thousands of South Africans, all because there is a bigger project of handing over the sovereignty of the country to white monopoly capital. Workers at SAA must not lose their jobs. Workers at SAA must be paid a living and respectable wage. Workers at SAA must not fall victim to the greed of leeches in big business, who use their appointees in government to destroy state-owned entities. What is needed is a stronger government intervention at SAA to rescue the airline from collapse. SAA should have its capacity developed to such an extent that they can dominate domestic travel routes together with other low-cost airlines. It should not be the case that we have airlines such as British Airways operating domestically in South Africa. SAA must own its aircraft, train its own pilots, develop the capacity of its own engineers, and expand its reach into the country and within the continent. Opportunities for growth and sustainability of the airline are massive. We only need to remove the political interference by the demigod of this administration, who goes around masquerading as the messiah of state-owned companies, but who actually sowed the seeds for their destruction while he was Minister of Finance. Praveen must fall. Thank you very much.
Honorable Wessels.
Honourable House Chair, it is very clear that the Honourable Paulson does not care about the livelihoods of 11,000 workers at SAA. It is very clear that his party and most trade unions in South Africa is only interested in their own ideology and in their own interest and not in the long-term livelihoods of workers in South Africa. Let me explain it. A salary with no increase is better than no salary. What is currently going to happen to those 11,000 employees is they are going to be unemployed. But that is what you want, and that is what trade unions in South Africa want. Because trade unions are only interested in short-term gains. Trade unions are currently the tail that's wagging the head of government. It's trade unions that are preventing government from doing what is necessary to be done to save our economy and to install the actual solutions that are necessary, especially in terms of our state-owned entities. What are trade unions doing? If we look at Eskom, a competent CEO was appointed, Pakamani Adebe, and he identified the crisis as an unsustainable wage bill and an inflated wage bill. He proposed a wage freeze. And what happened? The trade union and the ANC member referred to NUMSA as irresponsible because they don't form part of the tripartite alliance, but your own tripartite alliance trade unions that form part of your federation does exactly the same. Because NUM did exactly the same with Eskom and threatened with industrial actions, stopped the plans of the new CEO, and he resigned. The same with the CEO at SAA. Vujani Jarana also had plans, the correct plans in place, but he was forced to resign because he saw that he's not going to be able to turn around the ship because of trade unions. We must take a stance. And this government must take a stance, but you'll have to take a stance against your own tripartite alliance. You will have to say enough is enough. You'll have to say that we cannot afford wage increases. This 5.9% wage increase is unsustainable. The back pay up until April 2019 cannot be afforded. At this stage, SAA cannot even on time pay their salaries this month. How will they be able to pay this money? We say enough is enough. Down with bailouts, stop the bailouts. At this point in time, money that should go to improving our infrastructure, should go to providing services to the poor, is going to SAA and to failed state-owned enterprises. We cannot allow any more bailouts. We are in a fiscal unsustainable position, and government knows this. The President knows this. The Minister of Finance knows this. But his hands are tied because of the power of trade unions. Agbare voorsitter, genoeg is genoeg. Daar moet standpunt ingeneem word. Hierdie ideologie kan nie wen nie. Die EFF en hulle maatjies kan nie wen nie. Hulle gaan die land totaal en al vernietig met hulle ideologiese, kortsigtige gesprekke en dieselfde met die ANC wat nie wil standpunt inneem teen die vakbonde nie. 5.9% kan nie 'n verhoging wees bo inflasie onbekostigbaar vir 'n instelling wat dit nie kan bekostig nie vir 'n maatskappy wat insolvent is, wat 'n verlies van 500 miljoen rand 'n maand maak. Dit is onvolhoubaar. Genoeg is genoeg.
Agbare lid Swart.
Thank you, House Chair. The ACDP thanks the IFP for calling for this much-needed debate. As we know, state-owned companies pose the greatest threat to the South African economy, with many repeatedly requesting guaranteed lines of credit from government. Clearly, this cannot continue. The interest-bearing debt of 10 of the largest SOCs has grown from 266 billion to 738 billion in 2017-18, a staggering increase of 177% over 8 years. Now, while Eskom remains the most serious risk to the fiscus over the past 13 years, SAA has incurred over 28 billion in cumulative losses. We know the airline is bankrupt and in its current configuration unlikely to ever generate sufficient cash flow to sustain its operations. And then we had a strike. And the workers, NUMSA's own members, are all poorer after the strike, after costing the workers 8 days in unpaid wages in a strike that should never have occurred. NUMSA has now accepted 5.9% that was offered before the strike. In other words, the union has cost their members a quarter of their monthly salary for no additional financial gain, and that is disgraceful. The implementation of the increase is also dependent on Minister of Finance's an additional cash bailout. And that takes the total cash bailouts to 59 billion over the past 23 years, whilst running at a cumulative loss. Clearly, this is unacceptable. And given the condition and the reluctance, understandable reluctance of government to provide further bailouts to SAA for working capital to fund its daily operations, that's not capital investment, that's running costs. The very likely outcome of this settlement is that it will be a temporary respite. There comes a point in every struggling company's life when shareholders must decide where to draw the line and how best to cut their losses. The government has never quite made that decision on SAA. That time is now. Instead, Treasury grudgingly gives, and the department comes time and time again for bailouts. And clearly, that time for the hard decisions is now. Business rescue is required. A possible private equity partner is there, and it is required. We need to invite those equity partners before there is nothing left to save. So from the ACDP's perspective, let's cut our losses and let's see what we can save. It's like an auntie at your party, at your Christmas party. She's there, but how do you continue when she misbehaves? You've got to deal with it once and for all, Minister, once and for all. Hard decisions are required. Now is the time for those decisions. I thank you.
Thank you.
House Chair and honorable members, some in authority would have us believe that operations at SAA are going like clockwork after an 8-day strike, which ended with a deal between management and unions last week Friday. However, as you are aware, even the 5% increase given to workers can only be implemented if and when SAA secures funds for working capital from the state. As usual, SAA hopes to receive this amount, another cash bailout, from government to fund its working capital. This from an SOE that last published its annual financial report in 2017. To make matters worse, even in that financial report, SAA showed a loss of about 5.56 billion rands for the year. Through these endless bailouts to SOEs like SAA, this uncaring government diverts resources that should be used to build houses for Gogo Dlamini and Tatu Dracha from Site C and Site B Kailicha. They use funds that should be used to address water challenges in Duikwa, Guwa, Echini.
money that should be channeled to schools infrastructure grant for building of schools and infrastructure and the eradication of mud schools in rural provinces like Limpopo, KwaZulu-Natal, the Eastern Cape, among others. Given the amount of bailouts SAA has received from taxpayers over the past 2 decades, and the fact that South Africa is itself heavily in debt, it should be clear to all and sundry that the fiscus can no longer afford to extend further bailouts to the national carrier. The fact of the matter is, having an SAA that is 100% government-owned is not sustainable under the current circumstances. In addition, the airline has deep-seated governance challenges which predate the likes of Dudumi and Waimosha. Fellow South Africans, the fact of the matter is that SAA, like most SOEs in South Africa, is a major drain on the fiscus. For these and many other reasons, we would like to state here, that we would have liked to state here, but due to time constraints are not able to do so, the UDM believes that the time has come for government to find a strategic equity partner for the national carrier. This must, however, be done in a manner that ensures that government has a controlling interest which will allow it to veto and overturn decisions. For examples in this regard, one has to look no further than our fellow BRICS partners, China and Russia. However, as we undertake this important step, it is important for us as a country to ensure that the private equity partners bring their own money, skills and expertise to the table in order to guard against using the same taxpayers' money to fund their stake at SAA, which would be in our view as another sophisticated form of a bailout. Yani napana ku Ethiopian Airways uyaninceda uthi izani sawuninceda niye kuba niphakamile kodwa nixakiwe ile airline lamasela.
Mhlonishwa August.
Honorable Chairperson, we cannot afford to continue to bail out our failing SOEs. SAA is in trouble and we all know it. Debt is too deep, revenue growth is too weak, procurement problems are costing us too much. There is simply too many costs and not enough income. All households in South Africa now knows this problem. We cannot keep on adding to South Africans' costs by raising VAT and fuel levies to pay for corruption and mismanagement. The rot must stop. The tens of billions sunk in the SAA have not yielded a profit or dividends for our country. Like Eskom, SAA has weakened the country by sucking up valuable funds we should have been using for service delivery, housing and investment in growth-enabling infrastructure. Chair, Good believes that SOEs must be financially independent from government, and we will support anyone who can turn around the ailing SAA and stop the need for bailouts. SOEs must be run efficiently and professionally so that they yield dividends. We need those dividends and profits to be used for the benefit of all South Africans so that we can invest more for South Africa. We need more budget to ensure that social grants keep pace with the inflation. We need more investment in critical social services like education, policing, and healthcare. And we need more investment in infrastructure that stimulates growth and job creation. Honorable Chair, the argument that state-owned entities in this development state serve interests beyond profitability cannot be used to justify destroying the economy. Good is pleased that management and the unions have reached an agreement to work together. It is time to fix SAA so that we can fix South Africa. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Phiri.
Ke a leboga modulasetulo le ntlo e tlhomphegilego. The strike by members of two unions at South African Airways has brought to the national attention the grave challenge faced by South African Airways. The debate on the state-owned companies tends to polarize opinions in our country. Unfortunately, the real issue tends to be lost in the partisan squabble about state-owned enterprises versus private ownership, as if the two forms of ownership cannot coexist. Mudulastulo, the ANC traditionally takes a rational approach that advances the interests of the country as a whole, informed by the balance of evidence. Honorable Chair, state-owned companies plays an important role in the country's economic growth as they provide strategic infrastructure and service delivery instrument. The National Development Plan, which is supported by the majority of parties in this House, emphasizes the centrality of a strong state institution as key building blocks of a developmental state. For this reason, it is incumbent upon the government of the ANC to work tirelessly towards finding amicable solutions to the challenges faced by the SAA and other SOEs. A narrative has developed in South Africa that SOEs are mere feeding pens for greedy and corruption. Those who promote this narrative forgot to mention that these companies offer opportunity to thousands of young, poor, and the working class of the South Africa to receive training and experience in careers that the private sector does not ordinarily provide. SAA, for instance, is currently offering airport operations and cabin crew training programs to the general public. Young people, even from rural areas, can apply and benefit from these accredited training opportunities. SOEs such as Transnet have trained thousands of artisans, technicians, and graduates in a variety of fields that's contributing to much needed skills and employment creation. The ANC is committed to actively promoting a culture of integrity in our SOEs. These companies must embody a high level of professional ethics as part of a renewed public administration that is developmental, accountable, and transparent. We condemn wasteful and corruption in all its manifestations at the SAA. We support cut costing measures the company is pursuing and the recovery of misappropriation of funds and stolen properties. The ANC must redouble effort to ensure that all SOEs have boards and executives that are broadly representative of the demographics of the South African population. We want to see many more women as chairpersons and as CEOs, especially of large companies like SAA, Eskom, and Transnet. We must not lose sight of the fact that the business environment for airline has deteriorated with the rising of fuel price and substantial weakening of world trade. According to the industry expert, this year will be the 10th consecutive year in negative for the airline industry. We disagree with those who claim that the SOEs always fail. In our own country, we have a number of companies in which the state holds a significant share, such as the Airport Company of South Africa and Telkom that compete successfully in their sector. Our continent, we are inspired by Ethiopian Airlines, a wholly state-owned company that has grown to become one of the most respected players in the aviation industry, with a footprint across Africa. In conclusion, Chair, I want to conclude by making an economic case why we need to turn around SAA for the good cause of our country. South African Airways, the South African national flag carrier, has a specific and important role to play as an enabler for tourism and a driver of economic growth through trade. The movement of the people and goods by air is growing in our country and in continent. Tourism remains an important catalyst for growth in South Africa. It supports one in every 12 jobs. SAA is our 4-star rated domestic, continental, and intercontinental airline. Mango is one of the most successful low-cost carrier on the continent. South African Airways Technical is the leading FAA accredited maintenance facility in Africa. With the African Continental Free Trade Area Treaty that has been ratified by the majority of African states, there are wonderful opportunities for South African state-owned companies to expand their operations on the continent and use their expertise to enter into partnership with African companies. With a shared vision, we believe that SAA can develop a long-term strategy strategic plan driven by individuals who put the interest of the company and the people of South Africa before their own. SAA carries the name and the flag of the nation and should once again be held in high regard as a symbol of a national pride. I thank you.
Thank you. Mhlonishwa Sheikh Imam.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. I think what we are doing here is we are forgetting what is the root cause of why SAA and other state-owned entities are in the position that it is today. Please do. Now, first of all, let me highlight some of the challenges. SAA Technical, they contravened all regulations. They disposed of our assets, which we bought at 800,000 each and sold them at 240,000. And the company that bought them then entered into a joint venture and secured a contract in South Africa for 1.46 billion rand. And we're expecting South African Airways to succeed. Coleman Andrews takes your entire fleet after getting paid over 200 million rand for the 2.5-year contract. That's what his salary was. Sells his entire fleet and decides to go and lease the fleet again. So you're still telling me South African Airways can be successful. You get a 1.6 billion bailout, but you give 326 million in sponsorships. Now, does that make sense? Now, the solution is not in the sale or the privatization. It is to deal with the root causes of why SAA is. And yes, indeed, I think a business rescue with independent administration and supervision is the route to go if we want to save South African Airways. And I'm not saying that South African Airways should remain solely a state-owned entity, because there is, I cannot understand that with the challenges that South African Airways face currently, bankrupt as it is, you have the unions demanding an 8% increase. And the question that I ask, had that been a private industry, will they be demanding 8% or not? Now we have a call center that we are operating from America, I'm told. We have evergreen contracts that continue. We have water, the very same water which cost about 2 rand, which we are paying exorbitant amounts for, and very little or nothing. And I'm told that our staff complement of almost 11,000 is 3 or 4 times more than any other airline for the number of flights that you have. Now, the question is, if we're going to continue in this route, surely we cannot expect it to be successful. Now, as government, we know these problems exist. And the question is, what are we doing about it? If we don't have the power and the control to be able to deal with it, put it under business rescue, let there be independent administration, give a guarantee and surety to the travelers that they won't lose their money. Otherwise, the uncertainty means more people will not want to fly with South African Airways.
Thank you. Honorable Majisha.
A few years ago, South African Airways retrenched 1,000 workers. Today, we are talking about almost another 1,000. And the question is, what is actually going to happen to the lives of these people? Are they going to get any jobs anywhere, etc.? So unemployment and hunger in that milieu is going to grow. That's a very serious problem, which says that South Africa has come to the end of the road. There is no money in the kitty to bail out most of the SOEs any further, of course. This is the end of the road, I want to say. handing over a control must be the last resort to keep SAA in business. It must be the last resort. For government to get a share of the profit, for government of all guarantees given to SAA and freed of all obligations to hand out perpetual bailouts, then we need to take that as the only option. I therefore am talking about here going to a business and saying, take 49, I remain with 51, so that we then can be able to move forward and share, but then at the same time save the lives of the people. SAA will still display national identity. As for jobs, the government must see to what extent attrition can work. Thereafter, a strategy must be in place to preserve as many jobs as possible. Finally, for those who will be retrenched, the government must help with the retraining and reskilling. Australia, the UK, Germany, amongst many others, have all put the running of their airlines in the hands of business people, and South Africa cannot retain SAA as a vanity project. Hence, I'm saying we need to look at, say, half-half, so that we then can be able to survive. But then the working people there have got to be saved. It must be a proper business, run as a business. If not, the government must indicate where the money will come from to bail it out every few months.
Right.
From what everyone knows, the
Right.
government hasn't got any money. But then you've got to supply, Mre.
Ralebo.
It's on.
Hayi. Mhloniphe Hlengwa. Honorable Madisha. Honorable Madisha, I know you can't do that. This is a sacred place. The maze is in the house. Okay, ngiyakuxolela bazakutshela ukuthi wenzeni na ungangizwa. Batla go botsa Mkhalala. Aga, ke go tshwaretse Mkhalala. Aga, continue.
Thank you very much, Honorable House Chairperson. I would like to repeat what the Honorable Nkosi E.M. Buthelezi said when he opened this debate. In diagnosing the problem, he said many have extensively diagnosed the rot and root causes for the failure. And more recently, some of the corrupt cronies have allegedly been fingered in state capture. To summarize the rot, it is greed, corruption, the flagrant abuse of public funds, and the deliberate disregard for our country's legislation, incompetent cadre deployment, and compromised and unethical leadership. The IFP has long held the view that SAA's reliance on state resources should be limited and phased out into a more sustainable cost model through a public-private partnership agreement in order for it to become globally competitive, drive down costs, and to restore service excellence. As things stand now, though, Honorable Chairperson, SAA is trading recklessly, as it already been put. So instead of bailing out SAA should be bailing out South Africans. We are paying so much money to a business which is supposed to be generating money for the state and the fiscus for us to meet the competing priorities and challenges of our people, to alleviate their plight and to deal with what you have consistently told us, ANC, the triple challenge of poverty, unemployment, and inequality. That money should be coming from SAA making money. Yet, those who live in conditions of poverty, through their taxes, have to bail out SAA. So we need to bite the bullet. No more bailouts. Because what we have done is that we have made bailouts a norm, whereas they are an exception. It is inexcusable that we have bailed out SAA with over 57 billion rands and in a vacuum, by the way, without any consequences, without any turnaround strategy, and it continues as business as usual. SAA holding the gun to our heads to say if you don't bail us out, then the economy is going to tank. But what has tanked is SAA. The problem here, Honorable House Chairperson, is that we've got a management crisis at SAA. We've got a leadership crisis at SAA. We need people who are fit for purpose with the necessary skills, knowledge, and expertise to run the entity so that it can fulfill the multiple strategic priorities in which government continues to want it to be kept. Amongst those is for it to be an economic driver, to be a jobs driver. But as things stand now, SAA has become a drain on the national fiscus. So as I say, Honorable House Chairperson, we need to bite the bullet. We have lamented long enough. The issue is the Zondo Commission, which is dealing with state capture, should focus itself, because it's clear that the tentacles of corruption and state capture were very much in the space of SOEs. We should be prioritizing the Zondo Commission to be investigating why these entities continue to collapse. So if it means a particular focus on SAA and ESCOM, then we... Uyabona indaba ze-sabotage. Shuthi khona inxeba esengilithintileke. But fundamentally, Honorable Chairperson, what we are saying is that if we do not deal with the systemic and endemic issues insofar as management collapses are concerned, we are not going to fix SAA. We are throwing financial solutions to non-financial problems. SAA must bail itself out by doing the right thing every day and generating money. The national fiscus cannot afford to continue doing that. And so the legacy of SAA is 57 billion rands taken from our taxes, whereas it is 57 billion rands that should have gone to change the lives of our people. Who is traveling on SAA? Why are we so fixated on keeping SAA, whereas the majority of our people who actually are traveling on trains are traveling in undesirable trains? Why aren't we bailing out Toll Plaza, for example, and buying new trains? SAA must shape up.
Honorable Kacharia.
Madam House Chair, many politicians fear that their nations will be irrelevant if they abandon their money-losing, flag-flying airlines. In most places, the market would fill the gap, provided the government got out of the way. But national pride is powerful, costly, and often stupid. What is SAA's stated vision? I quote, to deliver a commercially sustainable, world-class air passenger and aviation service in South Africa, the African continent, and to our tourism and trading partners. Well, that's a fail then. It's a commercial disaster bar none and a massive drain on the fiscus. South African Airways only continues to fly with massive government assistance to the tune of some 57 billion rands cumulatively since 1994. Think about that. The airline has tried to restructure 10 times in the past 2 decades. According to Sean Gossel, who teaches at the Graduate School of Business at the University of Cape Town down the road, over 50 African countries continue to dabble in the airline industry despite the continent's poor track record, mainly because a national carrier is believed to be a source of patriotic pride and economic status, both of which are very seldom borne out in reality. South Africa, along with Zimbabwe...
Point of order.
Yeah.
Ntate Make, on what rule are you rising?
I wouldn't know the rule.
Well, then sit down.
Okay, let me listen.
Yeah, did I hear the speaker to be saying that national pride is stupid?
Honorable Kachalia, do you want to respond to that? That is not a point of order, but do you want to respond to that?
It's a very stupid point.
Okay, thank you. I'm not going to. Honorable...
No, Honorable Chairperson, that language is unparliamentary, referring to other members stupid.
Honorable Kachalia.
Yeah, Rule 80.
House Chair, I rise on point Rule 92. House Chairperson, the word stupid is not unparliamentary when used to describe something.
Thank you.
Honourable Kachalia is not referring to anyone, he is referring to a thing, and therefore is not out of order.
What I would want to say to the Honorable Khadebe, I wanted to say that he referred to no one, and I know through our conventions and our rules, we have not ruled it unparliamentary. Thank you.
Right, South Africa, along with Zimbabwe, India, Pakistan and Romania, still have tight controls over their airlines, all of which are in debt to the tune of many billions. Many experts hold that a country should offer subsidies to a foreign airline to run routes that the government once served. South Africa might not get the boost of having its flag carrier abroad, but taxpayers would win. Anyway, this is moot. SAA is dying. It is in the departure lounge. A lesson that governments should never be involved in airlines. And if they do, a hands-off approach is needed, where government, which may or may not own shares, acts in the background to prop it up, but doesn't meddle in day-to-day operations. But the post-1994 ANC government has provided a textbook case of meddling, dictating labor hiring by way of cadre deployment at every level, and the facilitation of graft. For example, at SAA Technical, the maintenance wing, this meant an inflation of 30 to 40% due to middlemen in the overall expenditure of 3.4 billion rands. For doing nothing, dololo, nice work if you can get it, assuming you have zero morality, that is. It might also have helped SAA if SAA were located in a place where operating an airline hub makes sense. And in case you need a lesson in geography, we are situated on the southern tip of this continent, along with Australia, New Zealand, Chile, and Argentina. We are the closest land mass to Antarctica. One continental success story is Ethiopian Air, a government-owned but business-driven enterprise that by most accounts is the only true global airline in Africa, with a network stretching from Beijing to Los Angeles to Sao Paulo. It has been so successful that other African countries are asking it to manage their airlines. So sell this albatross to them, or to Richard Branson, or anyone else who may be interested. We'll probably have to pay them to take it off our hands. In any event, SAA is a limited liability company with the cost of closure standing at 19.7 billion rands. The choices are clear. Close it down, place it in business rescue, or pay someone to take it over. And you might even negotiate a small carry to feed your socialist ego. But to continue to bail it out, having shouldered bailouts to the tune of mega billions, is sheer unadulterated
Thank you
madness.
very much. Your time is up.
And as for Dudu Moyeni,
Thank you
lock her up
very much, Honorable
and throw
Member.
the key away.
Mechabalan, nako ke ya hao mme.
House Chairperson, Ministers, Deputy Ministers, Members of Parliament, and viewers at home. Let me quickly go to just this last point about the socialist ego. Do you even know what is a socialist ego? Socialist ego, the one that you're speaking about, that you know, is the one that equates to triple challenges, where society is not equal, where the DA, where it's sitting, it wants an unequal society. That is your social ego that you know. Let us tell you what's our social ego. It's the one that moves towards a just society. With that said, we want to say as the ANC, we support the revolution of Cuba, where Cubans continue to fight for their own freedom. We are saying to them they must continue to dispose and dispel the neoliberals that wants to take over and dictate to what happens to their country. The strike at SAA employees have been called off by the two unions, NUMSA and SACA. The strike was settled basically on the terms offered by management before the strike. In summary, after 2 days of conclusion of discussions under the auspices of CCMA, the parties agreed on an increased 5.9% on total cost of employment retrospective to April 1, 2019, which will be paid in the February 2020 payroll, subject to availability of funding. The Section 189 of Labour Relations Act consultation on possible retrenchments will be deferred to January 2020. Consultations on retrenchment will continue for SAA management categories outside the bargaining unit. The parties further agreed to establish a task team whose main objective will be to identify and consider cost-saving initiatives, including insourcing and contracts. The fact that the unions decided to go on strike before entering into a CCMA facilitated mediation process means there is a serious trust deficit between organized labor and those in management and the board of SAA. The fact that workers took their own company to brink of collapse because they will not accept a 5.9% increase, wage increase, suggests that there is more to this dispute that meets the eye. The most progressive aspect of the settlement is that the agreement to establish a task team made up of management and organized labor to consider ways to save SAA. As the ANC, we support this initiative and we hope that it succeeds. Government, trade unions, boards, executive of state-owned companies, particularly those facing financial challenges, can take a leaf out of the book of SAA as a model to collective problem solving. Now, we need to build a social compact and reject privatization. I'll repeat that. We need to build social compacts and reject privatization. As South Africans, we must realize that with the exception of the likes of the AfriForum, Solidarity, the DA and the FF+, who are still suffering from the apartheid hangover, we're not too far apart in our desire to build a successful South African institutions. In our election manifesto as the ANC, we call for the strengthening of the social compact between government, business, labor, civil society and traditional leaders to build a developmental state. We unapologetically said that we will, and I quote, strengthen and consolidate existing state-owned enterprises to ensure they remain focused on their mandates to support socio-economic transformation while improving their governance systems and containing the cost of their operations. The ANC will extend public ownership guided by the feasibility studies in pharmaceuticals, renewable energy, and the banking outlaws code. In his reply, the president in the State of the Nation address on a debate that took place this year in 2019, President Ramaphosa, this is what he said, I quote, "We disagree with the view that the most effective and efficient way to provide services to our people is through the private sector."
Honourable Member, on what rule are you rising?
Will the Honourable Member be prepared to take a question?
Honourable Member, are you prepared to take a question?
Let me clarify you on policy and where the ANC, as a government party, where it's headed first. I'll come to you later on. Anyway, there's nothing that you're going to ask us. You will ask me some stupid things, so I don't have time for that. In essence, the ANC has committed not only to reject the neoliberal notion that only the private sector is capable of delivering services, distributing resources in the economy. In our manifesto, we further said that we'll extend the role of the state in various sectors of our economy. Of course, we made this commitment with determination to run a clean state and intensify the fight against corruption. Those who claim that the ANC is seeking to privatize SOCs should read the ANC 2019 election manifesto and listen to the president of the country and the president of the ANC. In this debate, we must be honest with ourselves which developmental state in history has ever succeeded by opening up its industries to competition with foreign capital as South Africa has done. Perhaps a thought we can consider is to revisit the policy of open skies in our country. This could be achieved by limiting of a period the license of foreign and domestic privately owned airlines in order to reposition SAA to compete and recover the profitable routes that it's used to service. Now, we need to oppose the Solidarity Union's court application. In this instance, we're aware of this solidarity, which is organized labor, wing of the AfriForum and the DA that exist in the West and neoliberal tendencies that serves the papers on SAA and the ministers of finance and public enterprises, asking the High Court to put the national flag, the national carrier on the business rescue might be a means to stop South Africa's losses, and the airline should be sold to private investors. We're not going to privatize. We don't have the mandate to govern. We're governing, and we're telling you, you can scream all you want. I wish to call on the president and government and SAA and the majority of trade unions to SAA to oppose solidarity court application. As said earlier, the best way to save SAA and all our SOCs is by building social compacts amongst patriotic South Africans to solve the problems confronting these national treasures. Similarly to the task of the SAA, the ANC says that we need to look into strategic partnership, and that's what we're looking into. So on this motion, there's no confusion. We're very clear we're going to move and we're going to save this airline. So this confusion that you want to create is not going to exist. And let me respond to you about the unions that we are speaking. It's trade unions, and they are progressive because they are the leftist trade unions. They are organized labor that deals with organized labor force that we have. Public service, as we're speaking, is the highest employer of government. Who's employing more than us at these instances? And people want to tell us that we must close out the airlines. Are you saying people must be unemployed because you are comfortable? We're saying we want strategic partnership that will be able to have conditions, and the conditions will be the private sector should come on board, should make sure that they assist in issues of poverty and alleviation of poverty and unemployment. That is a progressive strategic partnership that we're going to have, and the state will own the higher percentage. We need to stand together against the business rescue. The chilling warning by a certain gentleman who is so-called experienced business rescue practitioner in Sunday newspapers was that the shareholder, that is government, will lose absolute control of the company, and the business rescue practitioner alone will decide on the way forward. And this is where I'll employ my honorable comrade Sheikh Imam to say that he needs to listen to the core. So as the ANC was saying, all progressive organizations cannot allow this to happen. It will signal a major setback of the project of building a democratic developmental state and an advance by neoliberalism. So I'll implore you that we come together and we discuss this matter. The worst thing is that this setback against progress will be inflicted by a group with neo-fascist leanings, regardless of our differences. As the ANC, we must call on the parties that understand this threat to stand shoulder to shoulder with the workers, with the board and the government to oppose the handover of SAA to business rescue practitioners. Let me respond to you now. I'm ready. I'm done with the speech. Now, let's speak to FF Plus very quickly. There's not much that you've said. We know that you're going to say the same things in any case, business rescue. You want us to solve the airline. You really are oblivious to the past injustices that we find ourselves in. And this is what we are trying to redress. And you are busy, you are telling us it's better to have a salary than not to have anything. There's a labor act that employs bargaining. That should happen. Now, when you come as a responsible member of parliament, you're telling it's better to have a salary, not to. Don't you care about the black life? Don't you care about a life of a black person that is employed also at the lower skilled labor force? And you want to tell us that we must just agree?
Thank you very much.
Oh my God, well, I was about to start. Is my time over?
Yes.
I wanted to speak to Manzoni. The ANC were on course, so thank you.
Thank you very much. We now recognize the Honorable the Deputy Minister of Public Enterprises.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Greetings to the honorable members of the House. Thank you very much for the opportunity to participate in this important matter that Honorable Telezi Inkosi has put for discussion. I'd like to say from the onset, having listened to the discussants, honorable members who came to engage the discussion, I'm not so sure Honorable Telezi would be so inspired, particularly given how he framed the discussion at the onset. The discussion he premised on invoking a sentiment, a national sentiment that is still ringing in our heads. A very powerful statement that says, we are stronger together. And it is that through difficulties keeps us going. And I think that was a very, very powerful platform laid to this discussion. I'm sure that cannot be stupid. It is not stupid, definitely. And no one could think of it as stupid. Given just the recent memory we have on how that slogan has carried us through the entire world. I think that is made to be part of this is really very important. Honorable Chair, South African Airways is indeed the national flag carrier, capable of providing reliable and extensive air transportation capacity linking South Africa, the continent, and the world. Unfortunately, it is objectively the truth that the airline has been financially and operationally challenged for many years as a result of both external and internal challenges. It's important at this point also to say the worldwide phenomenon of the aviation industry is that it is characterized by thin margins, very thin margins, even amongst the best performing airlines in the world. South Africa has also an added challenge of its geographic location in that it is mainly situated outside of the main traffic flows in the Northern Hemisphere. Of course, compounding the challenges are high costs relative to revenues, inefficiency, low productivity, and poor management decisions that have been made that also contributed to the multiplicity of problems the airline has. So it is undeniable that for the airline to compete effectively and cease being the drain on the fiscus, it's imperative that it be turned around and be made fit for purpose. The Minister of Public Enterprises, in his budget vote speech that he made in this august house, he indicated that the department is supporting SAA on its turnaround plan, a turnaround strategy that is premised on 4 pillars, which I would like just to spend a little time on. Firstly, revenue stimulation and network optimization. Secondly, the organizational redesign of the entity. And thirdly, dealing with supply chain transformation, for a lot of the challenges reside within this area of supply chain. Of course, fourthly, another leg of that strategy is the business processes transformation, particularly targeting SAA Technical. During the course of the year, that strategy has since been reviewed and updated to take account of the challenging external competitive environment as well as progress in the implementation of the initiatives. The airline, in spite of the challenges in totality, has been making progress, and I would like just to attribute a few of those aspects of progress the airline has been making in terms of the implementation of that turnaround strategy. Firstly, the airline has obtained approval for lease of 4 A350-900 aircraft to be utilized on the long-haul routes in New York, Frankfurt, as well as Hong Kong, which are expected to reduce the fuel and maintenance cost and boost revenues because the fleet that has been used to operate such routes has proven itself to be a lot more costly in terms of maintenance, the fuel costs attached to that. Secondly, the airline has concluded its organizational redesign exercise, which is aimed at streamlining operational and decision-making processes and improving its productivity. It has also initiated the mandated consultation process to give effect to that redesign. The invoking of provisions of the Labor Relations Act in pursuit of the necessary restructuring that should take place have already been introduced to the stakeholder community within the airline. It has also reviewed contracts with its top 20 vendors, the so-called evergreen contracts that the airline is committed to. 20 of them have since been taken on review. They account for just over half of the company's total annual spend and is implementing initiatives to reduce costs. Thus far, over 500 million has been saved in these efforts. In addition, it has reformed the procurement processes to strengthen governance and eliminate corruption. A new CEO has been appointed as SAA technical and other key positions are being filled. Procurement issues are being addressed, and the airline is ensuring compliance with regulatory requirements of the Civil Aviation Authority. Importantly, over the past few months, the airline has started putting in place a management and a leadership team committed to and capable of delivering of the goals that the institution has. Government has also pledged support to the airline to enable this turnaround. Already, SAA has 19.1 billion government guarantee facility, of which 11.8 billion of it is currently utilized. 5.5 billion was transferred to SAA in the current year to enable the carrier to repay debts and funding its working capital requirements. In addition, during the medium-term budget policy statement, the Minister of Finance proposed that the 9.2 billion be allocated to SAA over the next 3 years to repay its existing government-guaranteed debt. He has also highlighted that the recovery of the airline was unlikely in its current configuration, and in this we are in full agreement. And many of the colleagues who have spoken here are harping on this question. To this end, Cabinet recently approved that the state-owned airlines be consolidated into a single group structure. Secondly, Cabinet has also approved that the process of searching in the market the strategic equity partners to explore possible partnerships be commenced with. In addition to bringing the management expertise required for the turnaround of the airline, such partnership can result in the burden of any future recapitalization being shared between government and such partners. The department has issued a request for proposal for the appointment of a transaction advisor or transaction advisors to assist in the implementation of these cabinet decisions. However, given the challenges facing the airline, achieving a successful turnaround requires alignment and commitment from all the stakeholders, including the board, management, government, lenders, employees, and unions. That is why the message Honorable Buthelezi was carrying in his introduction of this motion is so important, because it is only when there is alignment and when we act together that we can likely to see progress much earlier. The decision by the South African Cabin Crew Association as well as NUMSA to embark on industrial action was indeed regrettable. unfortunate in the circumstances, rather than contributing to the recovery that is much needed, it only served to exacerbate the problems. But again, having said this, it has also provided an opportunity in which the possibility to act together is possible going forward. I think the issue of confidence needs to be strengthened, and that is what we'll be supporting that environment to achieve. The further aggravation by court actions at this time may also not be helpful to the situation. There needs to be a better, nuanced approach to dealing with this difficult matter. The department believes that the recovery of the airline is possible, and this can be achieved within the parameters of the fiscal support already on the table. But this will require determined, concerted effort across the board. By this, I'm speaking to the issue whether or not there is still the need for additional support, be it in the form of guarantees or cash injection. The existing arrangements do make for a possibility to undertake all these ventures without the need for the fiscus to again be relied upon. This, of course, can ensure that jobs are preserved to the extent it is necessary, as well connectivity within South Africa's key trade and tourism partners is maintained with positive spin-offs for the economy, particularly the tourism sector, which employs many of the low-skilled people. As I conclude, Chair, this requires that we act together, and of course it is true that very tough decisions in the immediate need to be made, but as we do so, it should be that everyone else who matters, of course ultimately the public, is taken into confidence about measures that are made to conclude this matter so that we have a viable airline. A possibility of partners in the external environment will strengthen this going forward. I thank you very much, Honorable Chair.
Thank you very much. Let me just clarify, that concludes the debate, honorable members. In case of the question why the member of the executive is responding, that is in line with Rule 130, number 6, because of the matter, the national public matter of importance. So it can be the IFP that responds, just to clarify. We now move to motions without notice. ANC.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chairperson. The African National Congress move without notice that the House notes with great pride that the son of the soil, Trevor Noah, made history over the weekend of 9-10 November 2019 as the first African comedian to sell out Madison Square Garden. Also notes that Noah, who is currently on his loud and clear tour, is the 4th highest paid comedian in the world, according to Forbes magazine. Acknowledges that despite the demands of hosting a late-night show, Noah made more than 70 stops across the world and had his second Netflix special aired. Further acknowledges that he was born in Soweto in South Africa and started to hone his comedy skills from the age of 20 years. Proudly notes that Noah's autobiographical comedy book, Born a Crime, was published in 2016 and garnered critical acclaim, and he was named one of the 35 most powerful people in New York media by The Hollywood Reporter in 2017-18. Congratulates him on his multiple successes, proudly placing South Africa on the global stage, and wishes him well in his future endeavors. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. If there are no objections, I put the motion. No objections, agreed to. DA?
I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that this House notes that a recent report from the Institute of Race Relations revealed that only 33% of children in the Republic live in households where both parents are present. further notes that many single parents across the Republic face daily battles to put a plate of food on the table, while incurring great costs to seek and collect child support from a former partner, who often defaults on child support. Encourages and ensures legislation is strengthened to ensure the payment of child support. Supports the child maintenance difficulties, South Africa's first annual National Child Support Awareness Week initiative, which will bring attention to the plights of single parents and the impact that this has on the children, to be held from 4 to 10 December 2019. Calls on the Department of Social Development and the Department of Justice and Correctional Services to ensure that parents do not default on child support. I so move.
Thank you, Honourable Member. If there are no objections, I put the motion. No objections, agreed to.
I rise on behalf of the EFF to move without notice that the House notes the wage agreement reached between the South African Airways, the National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa, and the South African Airways Cabin Crew Association, ratified on the 21st of November 2019. Further notes that the unions took industrial action against SAA because of the failure of the employer to be reasonable to the plight of the workers of the SAA. Acknowledge that the agreement inter alia includes an increase of 5.9% on total cost of employment retrospectively to 1 April 2019, which will be paid in February 2020 payroll. Subject to the availability of funding, the back payment for the first 6 months from April to September 2019 will be paid in March in 2020 payroll. Remaining 4 months from October 2019 to January 2020 back pay will be paid on the April 2020 payroll. Further acknowledge that this is a victory for the workers and a lesson to the capitalists that the workers must not suffer because of the greedy and mismanagement of companies by bosses who earn offensively high salaries. We congratulate the unions and SAA for finally reaching an agreement. Power to the workers. Pansi nama capitalist pansi.
Thank you, Honourable Member. If there are no objections, I put the motion.
Chair, the ANC object.
There are objections. The motion will be converted to a notice of motion. Thank you, Member.
Chair, is the ANC objecting to the workers? The workers must know that the ANC is rejecting to the workers.
Honourable
That is the
Member.
ANC for you. Basebenzi bonani ANC. The enemy of the workers.
Honourable members, can we be in order, please? Can we be in order? That kind of behavior is unacceptable. Can we continue? ANC?
Thank you, House Chair. I rise on behalf of the African National Congress to move that the House, 1, knows that the South African under-23 soccer team qualified for the 2020 Tokyo Olympic Games after snatching 6-5 penalty shootout victory from Ghana in Cairo on Friday, the 22nd of November, 2019. Understands that the penalty shootout follows a 2-2 stalemate during the normal 90 minutes time. Recalls that the South Africans will join Egypt and the Ivory Coast as the 3 African representatives among the 16 nations in Japan next July and August. Commends the South African junior soccer team and the coach, David Notwane, for the hard work that they displayed, and congratulates the team and wishes them well in the Olympic Games in Tokyo next year. I so move, House Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. If there are no objections, I put the motion. No objections, motion agreed to. IFP.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. On behalf of the Inkatha Freedom Party, I move without notice that the House notes the untimely death of Senior State Advocate Adelaide Ann Ferreira Watt, aged 51, who was shot in her left hip when a weapon believed to be a shotgun, booked in as evidence in a house robbery case, was accidentally discharged in a regional court in Mzimkhulu, KwaZulu-Natal on Monday last week. Understands that she later died in a nearby hospital. Acknowledges the need for proper checks and balances to ensure that exhibits for evidence in our courtrooms, like weapons, are properly disarmed. Calls for a thorough investigation into the incident, and also calls that those responsible for the negligence be held accountable. And finally, extends its deepest condolences to the friends and family of the late Senior State Advocate Adelaide Ferreira Watt. I so move.
Thank you, Honourable Member. No objections, motion agreed to. FF Plus.
Thank you, House Chair. The Freedom Front Plus moves without notice that the House notes that on the 9th of December 2019, Miss South Africa 2019, Zozibizi Tunzi, will be representing South Africa at the Miss Universe pageant to be held in Atlanta, Georgia. Further notes that her national costume that was designed by Lloyd Candlin promotes the He for She campaign and gender equality. Hereby acknowledges her role as an ambassador of South Africa, role model for South Africans, especially women and young people, as well as the part she plays in creating national unity. We hereby wish Ms. Tunzi good luck for the upcoming pageant. May she bring the crown home. I so move.
Thank you, Honourable Member. If there are no objections, I put the motion. No objections, agreed to. ANC.
The African National Congress moves without notice that the House knows that the young Ufenze Pitsi has become the first black South African woman to conduct and own the first ever all-black orchestra, Anchored Sound. Acknowledges that the 27-year-old born in Mabopane grew up with her mother in a single-parent home and received influence from her late grandfather, who was an orchestra conductor and a trumpet player. Recalls that she played her first instrument at the age of 12, but growing up, she was exposed to all kinds of music, including jazz and gospel. That prepared her for a career ahead. Remembers that she sought to create a choir that she began in 2017 with hand-picked young members with training in classical music, and currently she has a 40-member orchestra, and congratulates Ufenze Pitsi for breaking the glass ceiling in classical music. Malibongwe, I so move.
Thank you, Honourable Member. If there are no objections, I put the motion. No objections, agreed to. ACDP.
On behalf of the ACDP, I move without notice that the House notes the development in the Jessie Hess case, where 2 suspects have been apprehended and appeared in court for murder, rape, and aggravated robbery. Congratulates the police for their hard work, particularly the compassion and support provided by the lead investigator, Colonel Pretorius, which contributed to the progress made. Thanks Minister Lindiwe Zulu for her engagement with Jessie's aunt, Sandra Hess, which made a difference and helped the family to know that Jessie was not forgotten. Acknowledges that as we deal with the scourge of violence amplified during Women's Month, each one of us have a role to play in making our country a place of hope and healing for those affected by violence. I so move.
Thank you, Honourable Member. If there are no objections, I put the motion. No objections. Motion agreed to. UDM.
House Chair, I move without notice on behalf of the United Democratic Movement that the House notes that Luyolo Glebe Yiba was crowned the winner of Idols SA Season 15 at Carnival City, Johannesburg on Sunday night, the 17th of November 2019. Further notes that Yiba went up against Nezi Msomi, another fan favorite who won Mzansi's hearts from the early stages of the competition, acknowledges that while Yiba and Msomi went head-to-head on stage in King Williamstown, Luyolo came out shining at the end and walked away with 1 million cash, a car, record deal from Gallo Records, musical equipment and clothing vouchers. Congratulates Luyolo Yiba and wishes him all the best for his music career. I so move.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. No objections to the motion. Motion agreed to. ATM. DA. You can press it, Honourable Member.
Sorry. Thank you, House Chair. I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that this House notes that shack fires are a common occurrence in informal settlements of the city of Ekurhuleni, acknowledges that the vulnerable community members residing in these informal settlements suffer huge trauma every time these fires occur, leaving them destitute and bereft of their personal belongings. Further notice that important documents such as birth certificates, identity documents, and SA Social Security Agency cards are destroyed during such disasters. Encourages the city to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the Department of Home Affairs, Department of Health, and SA Social Security Agency to dispatch emergency response services to disaster zones within 48 hours. I so move.
Thank you, Honourable Member. If there are no objections, I put the motion. No objections, motion agreed to. EFF.
Thank you, House Chair. I rise on behalf of the EFF to move without notice that the House knows that Monday, the 25th of November, marked the beginning of the International 16 Days of Activism Against the Abuse of Women and Girl Children. Further note that the 2019 campaign is particularly poignant for South Africa, as our society has been throttled by brutal incidents of women abuse since the beginning of this year. This has defined South Africa as a fundamentally women-hating society where the lives of women are easily dispensable. Acknowledge that the phenomenon of rape, femicide, misogyny, patriarchy, and sexual harassment at homes, in the workplace, in churches, and in each and every corner of the country has made living a daily struggle for existence for millions of women and girls in this country. Further acknowledge that despite the noise and efforts made in the past, we do not seem to have a handle on how to stop the abuse of women and girls in the country. We call on all South Africans to be activists for the liberation of women and in our daily conduct, eschew the abuse of women and children each and every day of our lives, not only during this period. I so move.
Thank you, Honourable Member. If there are no objections, I put the motion. Motion agreed to. ANC.
Thanks, Chair. I move on behalf of the African National Congress without notice that the House notes that the 25th November is annually commemorated as an international day for the elimination of violence against women. 2, further notes that the 2019 theme for the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women is Orange, the World. Generation Equality Stands Against Rape. 3, welcome the multi-year efforts aimed at preventing and eliminating violence against women and girls, which will focus on the issue of rape as a specific form of harm committed against women and girls in times of peace and war. Acknowledge that, like in the previous years, this International Day will mark the launch of the 16 days of activism that will conclude on the 10th December 2019, which is International Women's Rights Day. Further acknowledge that violence against women continue to be an obstacle to achieving equality, development, peace, as well as to the fulfillment of women and girls and women's rights.
Thank you very much.
Calls upon South Africans to condemn.
Thank you. If there are no objections, I put the motion. No objections, motion agreed to. Good.
Thank you, Chair. I hereby move on behalf of Good that this House acknowledges National Disability Rights Awareness Month, which started on 3rd November 2019 until 3rd December 2019. That we recognize this year's theme as building a South Africa inclusive of disability rights. We are proud of role models like Noluthando Makalima, a surfer from Kailicha, who was recently chosen to represent South Africa in the United States at the World Adaptive Suffering Championships, and of Mpumelelo Mhlongo, who broke his own world record at the World Para-Athletics Championship. These are only a few examples of great South Africans who are making us proud on the world stage. As a nation, Good advocates that we actively support those living with disability beyond National Disability Awareness Month. I so move.
Thank you, Honourable Member. If there are no objections, I put the motion. Motion agreed to. NFP.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair. The National Freedom Party moves without notice that this House notes that the community of Attrition and Caledon are up in arms that the Tees Waterkloof municipality has ignored their pleas to stop a cell phone tower being erected in the area of residence. Further note that the erection of cell phone towers is a health hazard to our citizens. Also note that a study done by a group of scientists declared that technical cell phone infrastructure emits inescapable radiation. Further note that a public health physician, Dr. David Carpenter, after extensive research being done, expressed grave concern that the effects of the rollout of 3, 4, and 5G technology will contribute to more human disease as a result of radio frequency radiation. Further note, despite the objection raised by the thousands of members of the community of Attrition and Caledon, the T. Waterkloof municipality has granted authority to a company called Atlas to erect the said cell phone. Also note that the community of Attrition, particularly members of the Attrition Forum, are being harassed and intimidated. Wherefore, we call on this Honourable House, particularly the Department of Environmental Affairs and Local Government, to put in place measures to protect the health of our citizens and to ensure that public participation, which was introduced to ensure members of the public are able to comment and be heard, and that all forms of commercial manipulation not be allowed at the expense of the well-being of our citizens. I so move.
Thank you, Honourable Member. If there are no objections, I put the motion. There are no objections. Motion agreed to. ANC.
Thank you, Chair. The African National Congress moves without notice that the House notes that on 30 November 2019, a new diagnostic facility was opened at Grooterskie Hospital as a collaboration between the University of Cape Town, University of Stellenbosch, South African Medical Research Council, and Siemens. Notes further that additionally a PET-CT scanner was unveiled as a joint program between UCT and Grooterskie Hospital. Understands that the use of this device will contribute markedly to the research and development of knowledge on tuberculosis, resulting in improved treatment plans, and commends the doctors and researchers on the hard work resulting in this program achievement. I so move.
Thank you, Honourable Member. If there are no objections, I put the motion. No objections, motion agreed to. AIC, not available. COPE, Not available. ANC.
The African National Congress moves without notice that the House, 1, encourages Lesotho special permits holders to apply for a new permit as the Lesotho special permit expires on December 2019. Secondly, notes that the expiry of the Lesotho special permit and the need to ensure all persons in South Africa are here on a lawful basis. With correct documentation, a 4 years special dispensation for Lesotho nationals has been approved. 3, acknowledges that the new LEP will help to regularize the stay of Lesotho nationals who are already in South Africa and is only applicable to existing holders of the LSP. Lastly, calls on prospective applicants to submit application online on the 18th of November 2019 through the VFS. The website is www.vspglobal.com, uppercase LEP, southafrica.com. And the cut-off date for the submission of the application is the 31st of March 2020. I so move.
Thank you, Honourable Member. If there are no objections, I put the motion. No objections, motion agreed to. TA.
Thank you, Chair. I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that this House congratulates Rowing South Africa on securing the rights to host the 2023 World Rowing Masters Regatta at the Roodeplaat Dam. Recognizes that this is the first World Rowing event ever to be held in Africa. Notes that the championships will boost tourism by bringing thousands of athletes and tourists to South Africa, and further calls on the Department of Environment, Forestry and Fisheries to ensure the integrated control of aquatic weeds at the Roodeplaat Dam so as not to put the championships at risk. I so move.
Thank you, Honourable Member. No objections, motion agreed to. PAC. Al-Jama. ANC.
Thanks. The African National Congress moves without notice that the House note that the Ndlovu Youth Choir, a rural choir based in Mutse in Limpopo province, have made South Africa proud again by winning an award like the Hollywood Music in Media Awards in collaboration with the flautist Wouter Kellerman when they won the Best Independent Music Video for their Zulu version of Ed Sheeran's Shape of You at the Avalon in Hollywood, California on the 20th November 2019. Recalls that the choir recently performed at the Ed Out Award and have an album coming out soon via Sony Music. Thirdly, recalls that the choir recently performed at the remembers that they firstly made waves when they become runner-up and popular reality competition show America's Got Talent 2019, and they became young ambassadors of the United Africa. It is said it takes a village to raise a child, but in this instance, Mutse village in Limpopo went beyond and raised a sensational group of children. As the ANC, we congratulate Ndlovu Youth Choir on flying the South African flag high. I so move. Makaula.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. If there are no objections, I put the motion. No objections, motion agreed to. That concludes motions without notice.
Honourable Chair.
The next, yes, Honourable Member, why are you rising?
No, I'm rising on a point of order, Chair.
What's your point of order, Honorable Member?
My point of order is on the DA. They've finished everything. They are not congratulating the after 12 Mukhalapa.
Thank you, Honorable Member. That's not a point of order. That's not a point of order, Honorable Member. The next item on the order paper.
House Chairperson, I'm sorry to have to
Honourable-
rise and I'm sorry to have to disrupt the proceedings.
Yes.
But that's the second time that member has taken a point of order that is not a point of order and that is out of order. Chair, I would ask you to ask the ANC whips to keep their members in control, because if he does that one more time, I'm going to refer him to the Rules Committee.
Okay, Honorable Member, I'll try that. Thank you, honorable members. Now we are doing member statements. The next item on the order paper is member statements. Does any member of the ANC wish to make a statement other than what we are doing now? A statement.
Chair. Thank you. Thank
Go
you,
ahead,
House Chair.
Honourable
International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people. The ANC notes that in 1997, the United Nations General Assembly called on the annual observance of the 29th of November as the International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people. The ANC further notes that the Committee on the Exercise of the Inalienable Rights of the Palestinian people has a mandate to advise the General Assembly on the program to enable the Palestinian people to exercise their rights, including the rights to self-determination without external interference, the right to national independence and sovereignty, and the right to return to their homes and property from which they have been dispossessed. The ANC acknowledges that the committee has strongly supported the objectives of two states, Israel and Palestine, living side by side within secure borders and recognized borders. The ANC further acknowledged that the committee strives to heighten international awareness of all aspects of the question of the Palestinian people and promote international support for and assistance of the Palestinian people. The ANC celebrates the opening of the exhibit, open quote, Palestine, the most universal of national causes, consisting of pictures and quotes by well-known public figures who have expressed solidarity with the Palestinian people, will be inaugurated at the United Nations.
Thank you very much, honorable
on
member.
the 27th of November. Thank you.
DA.
Mhlalinga phambili. 21-year-old Precious Ramabulane died after being allegedly raped and stabbed 52 times in the early hours of Sunday morning. She was a DA student organization activist and was studying business management at the Capricorn TVET College's Ramakgopa campus, Mokomene village in Limpopo. This is just the latest example of violent incidents which paint a picture of universities and TVET colleges as increasingly brutal, violent, and unpleasant spaces to study and work. The DA has called for a wide-ranging and comprehensive ministerial commission on violence and trauma on university and college campuses, following the escalating levels of violence across campuses which have reached crisis levels. In recent months, we have seen murders, rapes, suicides, and violence at institutions of higher learning throughout the country. We need to prioritize safety at institutions of higher learning by implementing urgent security reforms in student residences. We need to accredit staff safe accommodation off campus where universities or TVETs have capacity to house students on campus and the political will to begin the process of constructing safer student residences. Sithi kwifamily ka Precious aluhlanga lungehlanga lala ngonkolo ntokazi. This happened at the start of the 16 days of activism. It shows exactly why we should have 365 days of activism.
Thank you, honorable member. EFF.
House Chairperson, the EFF is really disturbed and disgusted by the continued mauling of Comrade Kaya Tageshe by our justice system. Katlakeshe was tried and imprisoned for his role in the advancement of struggle for free quality education in this country. But however, the state decided to pick him as a guinea pig to make an example of him, that should there be anyone who dares to challenge the status quo, will end up being like Comrade Kakeshe. Kaya fought so that the children of the poor can have access to the universities and TVETs. Not only that, but equally, our mothers and fathers can be able to be insourced and employed directly by the universities. He was selfless, he was brave. For that, the system does not want to forgive him and will never forgive him. The continued incarceration of Comrade Kakeshe is evil. It is brutal and inhuman. Despite reports by his lawyer that he is suffering psychological trauma, our state continues to keep him incarcerated. As if we do not have some of the members of the executive who were once leading young people, who understand the nature and the struggles of young people, who understand that there is no formula in protest. I'm speaking about Comrade Njabulo Nzunza. I'm speaking about the current Minister of Justice, Comrade Ronald Lamola. I'm speaking about former President of the Youth League, Comrade Fikile Mbalula. I'm speaking about Comrade who led young...
Honorable members, we work according to time. Honorable members, please, we work according to time. 1.5 minutes is allocated for this and nothing more. ANC?
Thank you,
Chair.
Chairperson.
In support of identified for the gender-based violence victims, we welcome the emergency action plan outlined by His Excellency the President, which aims to combat violence against women and children through a coordinated government and civil society effort. Some of these are identification of strategic buildings in all provinces by the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure for accommodation for victims of gender-based violence. The Department of Justice and Constitutional Development will also evaluate government personnel working directly with children and persons with intellectual challenges. Thus far, the department has vetted approximately 500 department officials, 1,500 prosecutors, and 2,942 family violence, children protection, and sexual offences members will be vetted against the National Register for Sex Offenders, as required by the Criminal Law Amendment Act of 2007. These are the few measures amongst many other identified which will contribute towards the finalization of the National Strategic Plan, which will be submitted by government by the end of November 2019. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Member. IFP.
Honorable House Chairperson, yesterday the Inkatha Freedom Party joined millions of men and women around the world in marking the start of the 16 days of activism campaign for no violence against women and children in Pietermaritzburg. The event coincided with the shocking news that a Capricorn TVET college student, Precious Ramabulana, was stabbed to death over the weekend in Limpopo. South Africa is one of the most dangerous countries for women and children to live in. This must change. The IFP believes that in order to beat South Africa's high levels of violence against women and children, we need the following. We need to introduce a gender equality module into the school curriculum. We need a social worker in every community, especially at schools where violence is rife. We need rape kits at all police stations. We must restore discipline at schools and in the home. We need to lead a campaign of moral revival in our communities. We need greater accountability from departments that fail the most vulnerable, starting with the departments of social development, police, justice, and constitutional development. As we commence the 16 days of activism campaign, the IFP calls on every South African, and in particular all of us men in the House, to commit ourselves fully. Thank you.
FF Plus.
Honourable House Chair, the FF Plus wishes to raise its serious concern with regards to the state of municipalities under Section 139B Provincial Intervention and the lack of any improvement in such municipalities to the detriment of service delivery and the residents of such. One example is the Masalinyana local municipality, which was under administration from April 2017 until recently. This municipality showed no improvement, outstanding debt to Eskom increased during this period, water infrastructure collapsed, audit outcomes regressed, and the financial position further deteriorated. It is shocking that the Free State Executive recently resolved to end the 139 intervention, effectively giving up on the people of Masalinyana. National Treasury has informed Masalinyana recently that it will not receive its equitable share payment due, invoking Section 2162 of the Constitution as the municipality passed an unfunded budget. This failure to pass a funded budget occurred whilst under provincial intervention. This shows the complete failure of the Free State government. The people of this municipality will suffer due to the ANC government's failure to comply with legislation. Cooperative governance and the mandate of provincial and national spheres of government to capacitate local government and enforce compliance are failing.
Thank you, Honourable Member.
Thank you, Chair.
ANC.
Thank you, House Chair. A Bloemfontein grandmother is grateful for the ANC government for doing everything for her visually impaired grandson. That one was Teboho Mosal. The 89-year-old Mamalo said these words on the occasion of handing over the keys of the house to her grandson by the President of South Africa and the Free State Premier on the 1st of November. Mama Rumo said her son was born blind and doesn't work, was firstly given a disability grant, and now her son was given a house. Teboho is one of the recipients of the department's mixed development housing program, which has also built houses for the bounded and military veterans. The house was handed over fully furnished. Teboho
Thank you.
also thanked the
Thank you
government.
very much, Honourable Member.
Thank you.
Order, Honourable Members. DA.
Thank you, House Chair. The Eastern Cape is in the midst of a crippling drought. The effects of this drought are evident in Dr. Beyers-Naudé local municipality, where the Nweba Dam, Graaff-Reinett's main water source, has been dry since February, resulting in ongoing water shortages to the town's 40,000 residents. Some residents have experienced up to 215 days without water this year alone. Even as nothing flows through the pipes, the meters continue to turn and residents are being charged for air. Thousands of fish died as the dam dried up. The residents were left with the responsibility of cleaning the dam, and over 2 days, organized by the Assembly Church, 74,000 dead fish were cleared from the dam by volunteers and disposed of. Despite an allocation of 30 million rand for drought relief, the municipality failed to spend the funds in time and had to apply for a rollover. The mayor is nowhere to be seen. The municipal manager is conspicuous in his absence. There is a complete lack of communication. Water truck deliveries are sporadic. Unlike the DA's proactive Day Zero program in Cape Town, which effectively prevented Day Zero, the Dr. Beyers-Naudé municipality has no plan whatsoever. Meanwhile, thirsty residents are left sucking on air by an uncaring ANC government. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. UDM.
Chairperson, for some time now, the United Kingdom has required South Africans to apply for visas to visit the UK because of that country's security concerns. This includes the tedious requirement to obtain a transit visa to connect with flights to other countries. Yet South Africa is still committed to freely welcome UK travelers and business people to our shores. Rightly or wrongly, there seems to have been a taint of distrust of South Africans that arose around 2008-2009. Much has changed since then, and one would argue that the time has come for the British and South African governments to reassess and to alleviate a situation that by design unfairly penalizes South Africans and virtually still brands us as potential terrorists. The UDM calls upon the South African government to sit down with their British counterparts to re-evaluate and to ascertain whether the reasons for their decision still stand. Also, the British government must please be requested to publish details
Thank you very much,
on where we are
Member.
failing. Utine?
Thank you, Honourable Member. ANC.
Thank you, House Chair. The ANC condemns the vandalism and setting of fire on trains in Gauteng recently. Some of the affected stations include Park Station, Maritzburg, Doornfontein, and Germiston. It is alleged that a Park Station, a number of criminals possibly entered the station, attacking and looting some of the shops, breaking glasses, tickets, windows. More alarming, however, was the stoning of the train, resulting in a broken windshield. It is alleged that the acts of vandalism coincide with PRASA attempted termination of security contracts, which would have put many security guards protecting the railways out of work. As the ANC, we want to urge that we would not allow harassment and criminal activities to happen in our train stations. We understand that the issue of losing jobs is a concern to every citizen, but we cannot allow vandalism and sabotage. These trains belong to the nation of South Africa. Setting them on fire and vandalism is a crime against the people. There is nothing to justify such crime. The ANC urges the South African police to be vigilant and arrest those responsible for crimes of this nature. The perpetrators should be charged, and a clear message has to be sent that we would want to condemn any criminal activities. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Good. Thank you. ANC.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair. The recent allegation of racism in the DA involving the Swartland mayor has not come as a surprise to the ANC. In fact, we are not perplexed nor flabbergasted because till now we know the real DA and its true colors. Honourable House Chair, it is alleged that in a meeting in Maritzburg, the DA mayor made a statement declaring colored people not competent to hold position of leadership or office. This resulted to the DA acting constituency chairperson Basil writing to the DA leader, Mr. Matikizela, calling for a motion of no confidence and for an urgent disciplinary measures to be taken against the mayor. Honourable House Chair, as if this insult was not enough, It is also alleged that the mayor advised Basil to refrain from registering black South African as DA members, and also not to certify the proof of address for blacks. The ANC believes that comments made by the mayor once again unmask the true character of the DA as the racist party constituted of the unrepentant, unreformed bigots with cantankerous, non-composmentous behavior. Now back at the who are now back at the hands of the Helen Zille following the departure of the fronting leader Musi Maimane. The ANC, as the ANC Honorable Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Member. DA.
Thank you, House Chair. More than a year ago, the United Nations Committee on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights called on South Africa to ensure that all children have access to education. But because of failures at Home Affairs, undocumented children are still refused entry to schools in our country. According to UNICEF, it is estimated that 5% of South African children do not have birth certificates. The South African Human Rights Commission furthermore states that the vast majority of learners adversely affected and impacted by a lack of documentation are poor black learners from predominantly rural areas. Basic Education Circular 1 of 2019 provides a grace period to get documented. But without the proactive assistance of Home Affairs, many of these children cannot access this service and are thrown out of school or denied exam admission due to lack of documentation. This is unfair discrimination, as they do not personally have the power to correct the situation. Furthermore, Section 28(2) of our Constitution states that the best interest of the child is of paramount importance in all matters concerning the child. The Deputy Minister should tell this House why children can still be denied access to school due to lack of documentation, and what steps Home Affairs and Basic Education will undertake to urgently assist such children.
Thank you, Honorable Member. EFF.
Chairperson, at Vusumuzi in Ward 90, Tembisa, Ekuruleni, the municipality, along with supporters of the ward councillor, Enrique Selwa, are attacking and destroying people's homes. When people are mobilizing to stop the attacks, they are threatened with violence. The leader of Abahlali Basemjondolo in the area, Melita Ngobo, was assaulted, arrested, and then jailed. She has been denied medical attention. What has become of our world, our nation, for abusing and violating women's rights as well as human rights? South Africa is facing a very painful and difficult situation of femicide, the killing of women. It is very shameful to see our government doing the same thing to people who are fighting for basic rights, such as the right to a home. The demolition of homes still continues in the area. Melita Ngobo was arrested for standing up to a government that attacks poor black people in violation of law and a court order. She was standing up for the dignity of human beings, for justice. Instead of defending her, the police stood by. While she was assaulted by supporters of the councillor, they then arrested her, detained her, and denied her medical attention. The ANC is contradicting itself. President Ramaphosa and Police Minister Mr. Cele have committed themselves to ensure that the government works to stop gender-based violence. Yet, the very same organs of the state that are supposed to protect women in our country are violating their rights. We call for the urgent halt to the demolition of people's homes.
Thank you, Honorable Member. ANC.
Thanks, House Chair. The ANC applauds the recent arrest of 7 Chinese and Taiwanese nationals busted for operating a factory allegedly involved in the trafficking of illegal immigrants and subjecting them to forced labor in our country. These nationals were arrested on the 12th of November in a joint operation between the Department of Employment and Labor, SABS, and the Hawks. At this company called Beautiful City Pty Ltd, located at Village Deep in Johannesburg, the officials discovered minor children employed at the factory and that the employer was violating labor legislation ranging from National Minimum Wage, Occupational Health and Safety Act, Basic Conditions of Employment Act. An audit by the department found that there were 91 workers employed at this factory. The ANC support that this employer has not only contravened the Unemployment Insurance Act and Unemployment Insurance Contributions Act, but has further spat in the face of the vulnerable by disregarding Section 27 of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa that guarantees employees the right to social security. We are deeply angered and strongly condemn the abuse of these workers by the human traffickers. We call on the government to take drastic measures in dealing with cheap labor and human trafficking. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Is AIC available now? ANC?
The ANC is advocating that gender-based violence is everyone's business and must be addressed by all of us and every day. The recent sad story of bullying occurred at Jan Viljoen Hoërskool that went viral on social networks is a cause of concern. It is reported that a white girl learner bullied a boy learner, and the boy learner didn't even respond or fight back. What a gentleman. Those who were involved are all suspended for failing to report or to intervene. The Department of Education, Social Development, Social Services, SGB, and the principal all work together and ensure that the victim gets social counseling sessions while the hearing is unfolding. The ANC, as a leader of society, has taken interest in this matter because it believed that bullying must be condemned at all schools, regardless of race, class, or sex. ANC MP for Rand West PCO, Jane Masino, visited the school to check if all the allegations are dealt with according to the law and the perpetrators are brought to book so that no one becomes part of the statistics of GBV. We applaud the principal for keeping the principal, even in the case that happened outside the school. The learners were dressed in school uniform, and therefore he acted. We, the ANC, is a caring organization that ensures that GBV shall never take place under our watch. Therefore, the ANC, unlike these others that judge people according to race, is the organization that says we are not going to sit down around while GBV happens at schools. Thank you.
Order, honorable members. That concludes members' statements. Are there any ministerial responses? Honorable Minister Cele.
Yes.
Honorable
Thanks.
Mashabane.
We'll definitely.
Deputy Minister Swete. Oh, I'm sorry, Honorable. Oh, ngiyabonga. Kancane sibabeke kahle bese uyaqhubeka mhlonishwa. Honorable Deputy Minister Swete. Honorable Mbalula. Honorable Deputy Minister Jeffries. Did I do 6? Honorable Dr. Mahaule, that should be the 6th one. Mhlonishwa Ngqongqoshe.
No, thanks. We'll definitely approach the honorable member, Ubab Maldingos, to get more information with the issue that he has raised. The state organs cannot be used for any personal gain, especially against the women that are standing for their rights. We'll just get more information, act, and report back to the House. The second matter that I'm sure for all South Africans, without fail, without political affiliation, we must stand up against what happens at the young patron at Capricorn. I've never experienced such a brutality. It's not just a matter, but with severe brutality on the young person. We are working on the matter. We are not very far on the matter. We just received the report about 30 minutes ago. We are calling on ourselves also to work around the sins and crimes of passion and look how do we work around. We're not saying that this is a passion one, but we're working around that to say that male partners, including the young or police officer at Sanini that was shot and killed by the husband, we need to look around those things and all condemn, but the state organs must really respond and respond decisively to the people that are maiming and killing, especially women, starting from now and forever. So thanks.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable Maite.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Yet another launch of 16 days of activism against abuse, gender-based violence, and femicide with the President in the Palale yesterday. We are comforted in pain that all the political parties in this room are not disagreeing about the fact that, which was reiterated by the President yesterday at the launch, patriarchy and misogyny, it's not a problem of women. It really cannot be that we continue launching and the UN says we are the most progressive, but women are still smelling freedom. So all men who are progressive need to stand up and join the message of the women of enough, it's enough. It's going to take government, partnership with government, private sector, communities, churches, and all of us, starting with the emergency plan that the President has launched with all political parties in this room for the next 6 months. But moving on, we need to go back to basics and work together. The JCPS cluster need to take care of what needs to be taken care of, but socialization of our children at home before we take them to school, that's for the future. But as for the NSP that is being finalized and will be launched and utilized from 2020 April, we shall all be working together. I have not heard a nay voice. I think we need to all stand up and say enough is enough. Real men don't maim.
Thank you very much, Honorable
women.
Minister. Honorable Jeffries.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to respond to the statement on the operation of the Sexual Offences Register. It is correct, it's currently operational, and we will be bringing legislation to this House early in the new year to extend the register to cover all acts of sexual offences and to broaden the aspect of who can apply to have a look at the register. Then just on the issue of Kanya Tretesha, he is, we are a state that is based on the supremacy of the Constitution and the rule of law. So he was imprisoned by the court. He has applied appealed against the sentence. He can't just be released. Also to remember that he's not been imprisoned for struggling for free education. He's been imprisoned, he was found guilty of burning a police vehicle. That is the fact. And the problem is, in many of the public protests, that there are large amounts of damage to property. There was large amounts of damage to property that was caused during the protests against or for free education. But basically, as the former minister and the current minister have both said, he is entitled to look at other remedies, applications to the president for pardon or other such remedies. So that is there, but he cannot just be released by the President without following due process. Thanks.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Minister. Honorable Swete.
Enkosi Nonkosimvana, ndicela ukuxelela lendlu into kokuba ngo-1955 kwanqulunqwa